Could what's inside your walls be rotting your house? I'm Jill Horner. This is Comcast Newsmakers. With me is Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Ross. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
Modern stucco construction was inexpensive and it was intended to be practical, but you've actually heard from constituents that have said that this has led to a variety of different problems, including mold in their homes. Talk to us about what you've heard from constituents.
Yes, Jill, one of my constituents brought me to their house to explain a problem which I wasn't very familiar with, but it apparently began back in the early 80s when people tried to improve the insulation of their houses and reduce the amount of heat loss. And so what had been typical stucco construction was changed, and we had a combination of plastic wraps and other things that were designed to reduce the amount of heat loss, essentially, that a home would have. But unfortunately, when they were doing that, they reduced the permeability of the house. So instead of having moisture in hot and cold days transmitted through the walls and escaping on either side of the wall, the moisture got trapped in the middle in these layers. And it wound up being retained there, and the resultant dampness in there has proved to create mold, black mold, and also ultimately to, in fact, rot some of the structural members and areas around windows.
So what can look like a typical house on the outside could potentially have some issues going on the inside, behind the walls, behind the stone or brick facade, and behind the stucco itself. Right,
particularly false stone facings and stucco of houses built between the early 80s and those that were built until the last few years, let's say 2005 to 10. Basically, this has been phased out, and they've started to become aware of the problem and start changing the building codes to prevent this from happening in new homes and future homes.
So codes have recently been changed to prevent this from happening again, but if you have a home built between that time period, you should be aware of this. Your home could potentially have some of these issues. Right. Now, we've seen some images where mold has become a major issue. This is one particular home in your district. Right. Mold has actually taken over around much of this home. This has led to about $200,000 worth of damage in one home. So major problem for this homeowner, obviously.
Yeah, it's really tough because superficially the exterior of the house looked pretty good, and there were only beginning to be a few little signs on the interior of some mold penetration. But when they opened up the house and really looked at what was going on inside the walls, they saw tremendous damage and very substantial amounts of black mold, which were threatening really the health of the family that were living inside. And ultimately the deterioration of the structural members was getting to a point where there were potential problems where the house could become compromised in terms of really its safety.
Is there recourse for homeowners?
Well, depending on your insurance policies, you might want to be checking to see whether or not this is covered. Unfortunately, in this particular case, the homeowner found out their coverage was not sufficient to deal with this, or at least that they're disputing it with the insurance company. And I think the most important message I want to give people is if your home was built in this period of time and you have this kind of construction, it should be not too complicated for you to get someone in to check and see whether or not the combination of moisture barriers is present, so that you might need to look further and see whether you need to address this problem before it gets badly out of control.
Important information. Thanks so much for being with us. We've been talking with Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Ross. I'm Jill Horner.